Happy video day, guys. Christina Brooke here today. I think you guys thought that 1 year, one brand, the year of Natasha Denona, you had seen your last December update. I thought so too. Until some internet detectives sent me some information via DM thanks to a sales associate at Kohl's. We have some information about a brand new launch that's coming out from Natasha that I'm going to be sharing with you the alleged details. So we don't know we know that this was sold to, I actually know that this was actually sold to somebody, so I'm assuming that yes, this is coming. I don't know if it's coming in December, and I don't know if it's coming in the beginning of January, but something very pretty is coming. So anyways, I decided, I was in the middle of doing my Natasha Denona entire palette collection ranking video. So when I found out it was a mini, I started thinking, you know, there's been a few times that Natasha Denona has strayed away from the original palette. Like, she has strayed. It was supposed to be a mini of the big palette and it ends up not looking nothing like it. I decided, why don't we look at some of the minis and compare them to the larger palette and to see how far she strayed. How many times does she really stray away from the original concept? I've got my entire palette collection of Natasha that's coming in an entire ranking video where I will include the minis with the big palettes and everything, and that is coming very soon. But I guess this video has to come first because we've got some gossip and you guys love the gossip. So anyways, if you are new, I'm Christina Brooke. I love Natasha Denona. I'm doing a buying everything Natasha Denona for 2021, and it went so well that I'm continuing it for 2022. So if you are a Natasha Denona fan, then this is the channel that maybe you want to hit subscribe to. I will be buying everything from Natasha Denona in 2022, as well as including a few little gossip, chismes for you guys, word on the street kind of information to get us all really excited about the new launches from the brand. So anyways, let's go ahead. Let's not waste too much time. I know you guys are dying to hear what I have to say. Let's get into it right now. Okay, guys. So here we go. I'll start the video with the gossip. So I just got a DM from an amazing internet detective, one of my amazing subscribers. You guys are so cool. And she went to Kohl's, and apparently there was a display of a brand new product from Natasha Denona that was out for purchase. And allegedly, it is going to be a mini. See what I'm doing here? You see what I'm doing here? Mini. Allegedly. So Biba is one of my favorite Natasha palettes. I love this palette so much. Thinking of a mini along these lines is absolutely exciting for me. It seems to me it's gonna have a very similar take on this. You know how sometimes the minis stray so far away from the actual big palette? So in this video, you guys know I'll be comparing the normal palette to the mini to kind of get an idea of how far she sometimes strays away from palettes. Well, it looks like this one is going to be a close match. The exciting thing to me is when they really do play off the bigger palette, because we love these palettes, and when we see the mini, we want it to play off of. I'm saying that this is going to play very off of this. Like, it is going to play very, very well off of this. So be excited. Very beautiful. To me, it looks like the perfect beginning of spring launch. Like, that looks like a palette that I want for the spring. Let's just say that. So anyways, that is our gossip for today's video. I think this one's gonna be a good one. I'm excited. So anyways, now let's get into comparing the larger size palettes against the minis. How far does she stray? And were there a lot of palettes that she strayed from? Let's go ahead and let's start looking at them right now. Full disclosure, I just had lunch. It's been a minute since I filmed the first part of this video, so we are back. You have no idea, but it has been a while. So anyways, what we're gonna do today is we're gonna see how far she has strayed away from her bigger size palettes. Like, did it happen often? Is it actually something rare for her? And yeah, I've got a lot of her minis. I don't have every single one. I have most of them. I have this thing that even though I kind of want to have like everything, at the same time I don't. So I end up not picking things up even when they're on sale. Like, oh, should I add that to my collection? I'm like, No, you know? So anyways, that's why I don't have every single one, but I do have a lot of them. So let's start off with the first one that I have sitting right here. 3 of them I do not have the big palette, okay? But I will show an image of it and I will kind of give you like an idea of whether I think that she strayed away or not. So let's start off with Zendo. Zendo was a real tricky one, okay? Because she released the mini before the larger palette, okay? I think I remember most of these, how it was done, but I'm not sure. But this one I know for a fact that this one was released first. So this is what we got for the mini Zendo. What a beauty this was. I remember when I saw this, I kind of fell in love with it. I love the tones in it. I thought it was unique. This is something different. Like, think about it. How many of your palettes look similar to this? I bet you a lot of you guys are thinking right now, hardly any, because I don't think that we have like these type of color stories in most of our palettes. So this was a really interesting palette. I love the coloration of the palette. She did an awesome job with this mini, but I will say we're starting off this video with one of the ones that I think that like, I don't know what happened here. Like this is the one that really I don't know what happened with. She releases the midi Zendo and she announces it. I think it was, yeah, it was this year. It was this year. This is what it ended up looking like. So I think most of us, when we saw this, we were kind of like, what? Like, what happened here? She has like this whole thing with the fire and cold and New York and whatever, Zen. I don't know. But like, I understand concepts, but I just didn't get like how these came to be. How was this the mini of this? I don't know. I'm like looking at the minis that are down here. Like, even if it was like a sister of this guy here, which this was what? Like the peak. You remember the peak that this came out with BoxyCharm? If it was like a sister to this one, so like this was a mini and it was with this one, I would say, okay, I kind of see it. You know, it had like those warm tones. And then she just decided to throw in the cool tones to just do that, cold versus hot idea. But this was just not... like, this wasn't this, like, I still don't get this. I would even consider this one closer to the midi retro that came out or the glam. Like, I would say any of those, I could see myself considering this being a closer version of than this one. I still don't get the relation between these two palettes. Just me. So Natasha did kind of like say, and I think it was because of the retro, okay? I think it was because of her retro that she kind of said like, look, I don't always copy like the small palette and make it into a big one. I kind of just get the idea and then I pick colors. I get it. Not loving that. Kind of like them to play off each other. They don't have to have the same exact colors, but they need, like, I like them to work together because when I see this, I say, oh my God, I love this. I want this big. But then this comes out and you're like, okay, so now another one. So this one, Lila released first. So let's look at the Lila palette. So this is what the Lila palette looked like. This one released first. It's in her leather packaging. So sorry if some of my palettes are not the most beautifully aesthetic for camera, but I use these things a lot, okay? So I think that for the most part, you see this, you're thinking purple tones, you kind of get like an idea of what you think the mini is gonna look like. And then she releases the mini Lila. These two guys, okay, there we go. That is a sister to the big palette. I totally see it. And even if you swatch these, you could tell like all the colors are not in this palette. I mean, I don't want them to like literally be a dupe of each other. I want them to be tones that like play off of each other or like in the same color family or work well together. But I don't want them to like be existing shades. So this one I was like really excited for. I thought that this was a really nice mini to the actual large palette. So now let's talk about one that I'm going to say this one was a tad confusing, okay? So we've gone through we've seen one that it was like completely off, like Zendo was not mini Zendo. Then we see one totally within the same spectrum. Lila, totally within the same spectrum, not repeated shades, but they totally work like, you could tell that they're definitely sisters. But then let's look at Metropolis. So Metropolis was this really cool palette. You guys know this is a super cool palette from Natasha. It had really, really awesome colors in it. Mine is rearranged. If you want to see how I rearranged Metropolis, I do have a video on rearranging this to my aesthetic because the way it was set up was really pretty, but more for photography in my opinion and less for using. So I set it up so it's easier for me to use. But anyways, when I look at this palette, when I look at this palette, I could think of a lot of ways that I could make a mini of it, right? Like you see so many tones in here. I mean, there's so much that you could do. But the interesting thing is what she gave us was this. Now this, yes, of course, these definitely play off of each other. The mini totally works with the actual palette. However, 3 of these shades are existing in this palette, so you're only really getting 2 new shades. I'm not a fan of that, you know, because I already own this big palette. So when I see these minis come out, like for somebody who really loves Natasha, I want to try something different. Like I want a different shade. I don't want the same ones that I have done over again in a mini. Like that's just not what I want, you know? So I hope she doesn't continue going in this direction. You know, like I understand maybe for the holiday, this was an interesting little set. It came with a brush and maybe it was like more like a gift, like kind of like idea, like she didn't think that you were supposed to have Metropolis and you were just buying this as a cute little gift. The colors from Metropolis that were included in this palette are absolutely stunning. They're probably the best colors from Metropolis, but I just, you know, in my opinion, I'm like, well, I just, you know, I don't want to have the same colors over again. I'm not going to finish these. So now I have more. Okay, so let's talk about a beauty, okay? So I loved this palette when it released. So this was the Mini Glam. The Mini Glam released before the Large Glam, I believe. I loved it. I thought it was so pretty. I think that this is probably one of the best minis from Natasha. It's just so well rounded. I love the looks that I create with it. This is one of the minis I could put in my bag and take on a vacation and know that I'm gonna get multiple looks out of it. It's gonna be easy to wear. Everything meshes really well together. Very well thought out. Yeah, it's neutral, but so pretty. So I really love this one, and when I saw that this was gonna be a glam, I was like, well, what is the big palette gonna look like? So then she releases Midi Glam, and it looks like this. So you guys can see this, I mean, you guys can see how they are within the same color family. There's a similarity there. They're definitely sisters. They're not super, super similar. You know, you've got more browns on this side, whereas this one goes a little bit cooler. You're getting more ashier colors, but they're kind of like sisters. You can definitely use them together, but you don't feel like you've got a repetitiveness here. At least I don't. I feel like they're different enough that they're like good to use together, good to use on their own, and I don't feel like I got multiples. I actually really love this one as well. I think that this was one that did not stray away from the original concept, but gave us something even better. Like it was like the original concept was good, and then she just like literally took it up a notch and said, yes, we're gonna make this even better. I think this is probably one of her most successful combinations of mini to midi. I think it was really, really good. But with every success, there's a huge disappointment. And let's talk about the biggest disappointment, mini to midi. And I think you guys know which one it is. Retro. So Mini Retro launched. This was probably one of her most successful minis. And what I think it is, and I just don't get why brands aren't catching on to this, is that the color in the center, like these two right here, gave us like a greenish vibe. People are wanting green. I see it everywhere. Mossy, like those mid-tone greens, like they really want that type of green. Not like lettuce green. Like, you know, mossy greens. They want to see these mossy type of greens, and I see it so much. So when she released this and this became so successful, it was kind of like, hey, stick in this color family. There's something like really good happening here, right? But we get the announcement that Midi Retro is coming out. So excited. We get this. All right. So look at these together. Now, the truth is, guys, on this one, it's a little bit closer than Zendo, okay? So there is something, like if you just look at this first line right here, maybe you could say the first line has something to do with each other, but where were the greens? Like I really think like 90% of the people were like, this is gonna be a greenish palette, but then we get this burgundy palette that it just, in my opinion, even looked more like it could be related to Mini Zendo, right? Like it almost looked like it could be related to Mini Zendo over Retro. It was kind of like one of the biggest letdowns of the year. Thank goodness that she heard us so loudly that now she's announcing there's going to be a Midi Retro Part 2. So let's talk about some of the ones that I don't have the Midi version of, but that I do think that they played off of each other really well. So Mini Love was one that I never picked up the large love. Now this one came out after the large love, the midi love. The midi love to me was just very pinky, like just everything I don't want in a palette. That's what the midi love was. Even though a lot of people really love that palette, like I feel like it's like one of those palettes that people really like it. It's just not my aesthetic, and that's totally cool. But this one was more my aesthetic. Now, if you guys look at them side by side, I will put the image of what it looks like here. These two totally played off each other. Like I can see the love in this one because the tones are a tad bit different. She actually created it a little bit more in my vibe, because it's not like I don't like the colors of the love, it's just I like them more to be like toned down like this one. So this was a really exciting one for me. I actually love this palette. It's so beautiful, and I do believe that that looks like what you would expect from the love palette, but with different colors, a little bit different, giving us something new, you know, and I think that she did a great job with that one as well. Let's talk about Tropic. So Mini Tropic, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there was like 2 shades in here that were actually in the big Tropic, right? So this was one that she kind of did just like Metropolis, in my opinion. Like there was shades in this palette that were actually in the Tropic palette. Now the Tropic palette ended up being discontinued. I know a lot of people didn't like Tropic. Some people really liked it, but a lot of people didn't. So I was okay because I never picked up Tropic to get this mini, and I actually got colors that were in the Tropic palette. But like Metropolis, I think it's not needed to do the minis with colors exact to the bigger palette. It's like you kind of feel bad for buying the bigger one when it's in the mini. You know what I mean? Like this was very well played off of Tropic. Like it literally looks like the Tropic palette. You could see the Tropic in this, right? But it didn't have to be like exact shades. I think that that's where it kind of went off. Now I do like this palette except for this color. I think it was like the worst color in the world. This is one that I do not own either. So Sunset. So you guys see the Sunset. This is the mini Sunset. The original Sunset released first. Now this is another one that I do think that they play off really well together. Actually, I almost even feel like this one plays really well off of a few of her palettes. Like for example, I think that this one plays really well with the bronze. If you guys can see, the bronze looks like it could be this one's sister. I also think that it played really good off of the Sunrise, which actually there's no mini Sunrise yet, right? So this looks like the Sunrise as well. So I think that she created a palette that works well with a few different palettes, but I can see the Sunset in here for sure. This is a nice little tiny way to create that sunset eye effect, and you totally can create a sunset eye with this, but this is probably her most inconsistent formula palette, that the formula just was not the same. It was not as good. She literally, after she released this one, all her formulas ended up being very consistent, and like she did not do this again. Everything kind of went back in line. But I do think the color combinations, definitely she played off of the Sunset. One thing I probably would have loved is maybe if this color here was a little bit like a brighter matte that had a little bit more red in it. Not because I like red, but because it was the Sunset and that was like a predominant shade in the Sunset palette. It would have been interesting to see something like that play off more on this mini. Okay, so those are all the minis that I have that she's already created bigger palettes. One of the ones that I'm interested in for next year is she gonna do a midi size Xenon? That's gonna be really interesting to me. There's a few palettes left over here that do not have minis, which obviously we have Biba, I have Safari, we have Circo Loco. These are going to be really cool minis. How about Trio Chrome? Can you imagine if all of the palette is like crazy shifty shades and she perfects that? That would be so cool. Hello Gold palette, one of the best sellers of her line. What is the mini gold going to look like? That should be your holiday of next year, because I think between a retro, can you imagine a retro release for the spring, retro part 2, and then a mini gold for the fall, whatever, from next year? That would be kind of epic, I think. But anyways, so that's this video. What do you guys think down below? There was some minis that I do not have, and the nude, which she hasn't created a nude palette, that's going to be another cool one. A midi nude with very light minimal tones, similar to the Huda Beauty new nude palette, like that kind of vibe. That would be kind of pretty. But anyways, we've got so much more to come with Natasha Denona. Let me know down below what has been your favorite mini to midi combination from her. Which one is the best that you think that she has released? And also, are you excited about the chisme, about the gossip? Let me know that down below. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.